Good day, students. Mr. Deegan back here for another installment of VidNotes videos. And we're going to build on what we learned last lesson about Martin Luther, the German monk who supported and really sparked the Protestant Reformation. So today we're going to be talking about the supporting cast of Martin Luther, people who inspired him and people who were inspired by him. Before Martin Luther came to the earth, there were reformers who inspired him to criticize the Catholic Church. He didn't live in a vacuum. So two of those reformers who we're going to talk about now are Jan Hus and John Wycliffe. They were dissenters. Dissenter is a person who disagrees, and they disagreed with the Catholic Church. They both were supportive of translating the Bible into their own languages, not Latin. Latin was the Catholic Church's main language. And if you didn't know Latin, if you weren't an upper class scholar, then you couldn't read the Bible for yourself. Somebody had to tell you what was in it. John Wycliffe, let's talk about him first. He was from England, and he was an educated man. He went to Oxford University in England, and he later became a professor and a theologian, someone who studies religion. He believed the Bible was Christianity's ultimate authority, and he created the first handwritten English Bibles in 1380. Why was this important? Because peasants and the lower class could now read the Bible for themselves. This was very important to John Wycliffe. Wycliffe also rejected the clergy's wealth. Clergy meaning those who were leaders in the Catholic Church. And he rejected the collection of indulgence money. In a previous lesson, we talked about indulgences, which were basically the Catholic Church's way of forgiving people's sins. And this is a phrase John Wycliffe said and wrote: "Crown, cloth, nor money make no priest, but power that Christ giveth." Talking about a true believer of the Christian faith. How did the Catholic Church punish this critic, John Wycliffe? Well, he died of natural causes in 1384, but about 40 years later, in 1428, Pope Martin V declared Wycliffe a heretic, an outlaw, and this pope ordered that Wycliffe's body be exhumed, dug out of the ground, and burned. And this is a sketch that shows people burning the body of John Wycliffe. They wanted to tarnish his legacy. They wanted to disrespect him, even in death. Like John Wycliffe, Jan Hus, there are a couple different ways you can say his name. We're going to stick with Jan Hus. He criticized the Catholic Church very early on, before Martin Luther. He was from an area in Eastern Europe called Bohemia. Today, Bohemia is the Czech Republic, not too far from Russia. Who is Jan Hus? He was a priest, philosopher, and a follower of Wycliffe. Hus came a little bit after Wycliffe. Like Wycliffe, Hus was a supporter of translating the Bible from Latin so Bohemians could read it for themselves. And Jan Hus also was targeted by the Catholic Church. The Church found Hus guilty of heresy, of being an outlaw, and in 1415, they burned him alive at the stake. And this drawing shows that incident. Hus is tied to a stake, and he is about to burn alive for criticizing the Catholic Church. Another John comes to power after Martin Luther, and this is John Calvin. He set up a Christian community in Switzerland in Central Europe. He was born in France. John Calvin was a French pastor and theologian who criticized the Catholic Church. He was 8 years old when Martin Luther wrote his 95 Theses, so this made an impact on him. One of John Calvin's major beliefs was predestination, the belief that God has decided all things beforehand, including which people will be eternally saved from damnation, saved from hell. John Calvin fled France in 1533 when the king ordered all Protestants arrested in France. And he moved to Geneva, Switzerland in 1541 and was asked to lead a theocracy there. What's a theocracy? It's a government that is controlled entirely by religious leaders and whose laws are religiously based. So John Calvin went to Geneva and left this legacy of Christianity that had strict rules. If you lived in Geneva, Switzerland, you couldn't wear bright clothes, you couldn't gamble or play cards. It was a very strict society.